and welcome to Conversations in Close Protection with your hosts Chuck Randolph and Chris Story. Our goal is to engage the greater protection community, inspire innovative thought, and as always, continue the conversation around all things close protection. Let's see what the guys are talking about this time.
Welcome to Conversations in Close Protection. My name is Chuck Randolph. Across the digital divide, the man whose Sisyphean pursuit of excellence continues, Mr. Chris Story.
Greetings.
Good evening, sir.
Salutations.
Greetings.
Yep.
Sight. Tristan Wheat was like, "Ooh, Sisyphean, remarkable."
Nice.
So
Good
for
times.
once, I'm on the road. You're not on the road.
Thank God.
We were both on the road last week. COVID. Who says America was like 40% COVID ridden right now? No one. They're
God,
all
it's
flying.
crazy, right?
Trust me.
Crazy. Yeah. Well, whatever. It's over. Just like
I will say
that's all it has to say is just the news just has to say it's over and we just move on.
Well, it's definitely. I mean, we talk about it a lot, but airports definitely are. I would say back to. I don't think 100%, but definitely back to like 80, 85.
Right.
I still have noted. I don't know about your travels, but I've noted still a remarkable number of like vendors and things at airports that are still closed down.
Right. So I would say the airports are like probably, like you said, 40% capacity. Now, when you're there, there's a shit ton of people because all the flights are condensed in one spot, right? But
Yeah.
the rest of it's somewhat of a ghost town. I'm still appreciating all of that, right? Because I did a little road trip today. I had to go to the office about an hour away, and it took me 55 minutes. So that was helpful. And it was like, no slowdowns in traffic, and we just keep this pace. I'm a happy camper.
I haven't been to Austin during like I would say pre-COVID rush hour. I mean, I've been there on details many times, but that's different. You're kind of contained to downtown. But I will say, while traffic is heavy, it's steady. So yeah, you're right. Not a ton of slowdowns going on, but it's here we go. I think we were both gone last week. Gone next week, gone the week after that, and the week after that. So giddy up, folks. Here we go. So we got trusty mobile studios for CICP this week.
There it is.
What about you? What have you been up to, man? I mean, we didn't even really get a chance to talk last week, and we got some great reception from folks on the re-release of Torgerson. So, and a nice note from him as well, thanking us to have him back on the show in one way or another. But
how can you not, right? Like, the guy is freaking. First off, he's straight up brawler, but on the flip side, he's extremely mindful, present. So he's like this. He's like a Renaissance guy.
Definitely,
I don't know if he cooks or not, but he's got that going for him.
Yeah, he's had a great journey, and he does. He's got a lot going on. He's gone through a lot in his personal life, and I think he's come out the other end and figured a lot of things out. I mean, I enjoy watching his posts, and I think it was kind of nice, and it was nice to re-listen to that, and I got a little more out of it. So, and nice to get that email from him thanking us for posting that back up. So,
nice.
It was appreciated.
Yeah, nice, good things.
What's been going
on
with you?
There's a lot of events happening, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think you and I both were on the road, so we missed the gathering in the greater Dallas area, but talking to some folks from the board and some folks that were there, it sounds like it was pretty nice gathering of folks.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a good, I mean, I had heard some folks from neighboring states were showing up, so that was kind of cool. I think that it's it's interesting, that people are, really putting into it, putting effort into these things. So that's super helpful. And then of course there are some other things happening as far as events like pretty big ones, gathering ATAP professionals recently, and then
Yep.
we hit ISC West, and then um,
And
then you have
ISC
a
West
bunch
was
of
like
support sporting events, so we're kind of getting back to it.
ISC West, man, that feels like that was 6 months ago.
Right,
But it was
right.
not. I mean,
And it was
yeah, I mean,
last
it
month.
was not.
Yeah, brutal.
Yeah, we're already talking about, I was just talking to Will Plummer earlier today about GSX, and I was like,
Yep,
man, is it time for that already?
yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's back to business. I mean, you know, like we've said, the pandemic has become the endemic, and it's just something we continue to deal with. I have noticed, this is not my personal feeling, and I would believe it's not yours either, Chris, but I have noticed that there has been a slight dip in a slight dip in Russia-Ukraine reporting, and I'm wondering if the regular news outlets are getting tired of that reporting. So, but I don't follow most of them anyways. I get my stuff from other sources, but I have noticed that just ever so slightly.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, well, I guess we're kind of tired of reporting about that, so it's gonna go away. Nothing to see here,
Well,
folks.
I think what we'll find is a lot of people reporting on the I guess what we'd say are the second and third or tertiary effects of Russia Ukraine. Now we have sanctions and all this other stuff going on, and now some of the other things that happen around sanctions are slightly starting to be felt. I know I saw somewhere where Russia's talking about refusing to send gas. I think maybe it was to Poland because they refused to pay for their gas in rubles, and I think you see supply chains being threatened. And now I just saw today an article about stagflation, which, I mean, hey, the 70s called.
Right.
So I think, I wonder if that's what the focus will be on. But still, that's in my mind, that takes us away from what the real issue is, which is the horrific issues going on over in Ukraine as a result of Russia's invasion.
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of things that are associated with that, right? So first off, it is the global impact, right, and the potential for World War III. That's number one, and then of course, that has risen to the top, and that's all anybody's seen and talked about for the past couple months. And I think people wanted it to go away, and now the world moves on at some point. So we're dealing with inflation. We're seeing some of the reporting that's coming out, from a economic impact in the U.S. What does that look
Mhm.
like? What are the impacts globally? And then, of course, in other news, right? Chinese manufacturing and shipping is almost to a standstill. What does that look like? And then how does that
Yeah,
affect us
I mean,
globally?
well,
And
yeah,
then, of course,
COVID
now
may
we're
be,
going to have food shortages. So
yeah, well,
lots going on.
COVID may be endemic, or we may talking about being an endemic, but I'm not sure it's done being a pandemic in
Right.
China. I mean, you're right. There's some,
Right.
I feel like there's some draconian measures being taken place to try to stymie the growth or the spread of this. But
Right.
any pause in the global supply chain is a pause in the global supply chain. But
Right.
and you hear things like, hey, maybe we'll move some of this stuff to Mexico or other places. But even then, I mean, you don't, that stuff doesn't start up on a dime.
Right.
You have to, even if you have old factories, they have to be, reconditioned and all these things. So I mean, it's going to be a slow churn for sure.
Yeah. And I think what we're seeing is, you know, a somewhat of a protracted recession, and what I mean by
Yeah.
protracted is, in the immediacy and the immediate gratification or instant gratification world, anything longer than a 36-hour news cycle is bad, right? So, but
Hmm.
folks are looking at, I mean, now multiple banks and financial institutions are pushing warnings about the recession to just ensure that, people are preparing. And we're already seeing, I saw a interesting report today that just talked about like what people are doing, how much people are spending, how many people have been shifting to the ability to pay for their living outright versus how many people are having to borrow, whether from credit cards or
Yep.
friends and family. So it's a big deal,
Did, did you see? So the World Bank issued something today. I saw this on UPI saying, and I pulled it up so I could kind of quote from it. But it says World Bank warned Tuesday that inflated food and energy prices are here to stay, and that the war in Ukraine could possibly put the world economy on a path of slow growth and high inflation for the next 3 years.
Yeah,
All that
next three, which
signals
means
stagflation.
right, next 3 to 5, right? So I mean, the
Yep.
markets are getting crushed. And,
Well,
and
I mean, tech's at an all-time low. I mean, I was on
yeah,
the plane today, and that's all CNBC was talking about for the 2-hour flight was,
right.
you name it, and stocks are down.
hmm Yeah, yeah, across the board, right? I mean, and so it's just interesting that this is where we are. And then, so that's on a global level, right? And then, of course,
Yeah.
now we're moving into our seasonal issues, like our regional seasonal weather issues, and
Yep.
we're moving to wildfire season. The drought continues.
Tornado,
Um,
wildfire,
yeah,
flood. I mean,
death, doom, and
then
destruction. Over
after
to you,
flood, there'll
Chuck.
be drought. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's not awesome.
Yeah, I know. It's for sure. I mean, I had to remember growing up in Indiana. I've been reminded what spring showers really means, in terms of big thunderstorms and tornado warnings and sirens and all that for sure.
Yeah. So it's
But
it's going to be interesting.
well, and tensions will continue to be high. I mean, it's just I think that's just where we are right now, and I think there's hope. As always, that we'll come out of this better than we were. And there's always some amazing things going on. But one thing, that I noticed, and you had posted this article up, was that the embassy, they're talking about reopening an embassy in Kyiv.
Oh yeah. Yep. PSD, let's get the
I mean,
band back together.
PSD, don't call it a comeback. We've been here for years. I mean, so just like
Oh
you,
my
I read
God.
that one and went, okay, here we go. People, yeah,
Right.
look it up, kids, if you haven't heard it before.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. You're right. I mean, it does mean. I mean, and you're the one that said this before to me. I mean, it doesn't mean that we're going to get It's not going to be like post. It's not going to be like it was in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Right.
Is that? But I do think it's the beginning of maybe a presence. What do you think? I mean, you're closer to that than I am.
It'll be a presence, but it definitely won't be that. I think it'll be some small, like right now, I think the foothold is just the government contracts, and they'll shift some folks in there. And those are people who are probably already, have been sitting on the sidelines doing whatever they're doing. But it's an interesting flex, I think, because I would say from my perspective, we're not fighting a war, right? But somebody else is in that place, and we're
We're supporting.
we're trying to
I mean,
we're definitely supporting it, right? And then we're trying to execute diplomacy at the same time, or at least giving this idea of normalized operations, right? So
normalized relations.
right,
Yep.
and so
I mean, it's
it's not awesome because the, it seems like we're literally poking the bear, right? So cool, we're going to do our thing diplomatically, and we're going to move around, and if there's an errant round or an errant artillery shell or whatever, then it's on. So I don't understand. I mean, I guess it could make Russia go, let's freaking mind our P's and Q's. Let's make sure we got some sort of DMZ happening, so we're at least on the borders.
Yep.
But it's an odd call to me, to be honest with you.
Oh, I think they're trying. I think the U.S. is in a situation where they're trying to rekindle or figure out what their foreign policy looks like now. Surely the folks in the puzzle palaces have all that figured out, or we hope they do. But I think part of the opening of that also is to show, support for Ukraine. I mean, what was it? The article that you sent me said it was like $3.7 billion that were committed according to the Pentagon in aid. So we're definitely supporting them. And I would think that, openly, I would say the opening of an embassy or the opening of a presence is merely probably window dressing on, the fact that we're sending howitzers and other types of things over there.
Right. Well, that's the thing is that
That's probably a little more concerning to Russian military than an embassy, but I think
right.
it all plays together.
And then the other piece is like, okay, great. What exactly are we doing? Like when is Russia go, you know what, this is, I know that, basically in diplomatic speak that it's a, you know, proxy war, but actually we're considering that we're at war because you're providing all this, you're, you're providing all these, arms and training, et cetera. It's like, there's really no difference, I mean, that's all they have to do is just kind of make a decision. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I believe
to say the least.
I believe that cyber will be our bellwether on that. Because right now, I mean, and I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago on the podcast, or it might have been Clubhouse, but there's a bit of a infighting amongst the cyber groups that are normally associated with with Russia. And I think there's a bit of people or groups that are at odds over Ukraine and Russia's involvement there. So I've been kind of watching, the regular cyberspaces to see what kinds of attacks or what kinds of warnings we're going to get, because I feel like that might be a bellwether to something larger that could come from Russia that might be directed at the U.S. But think about it from Russia's point of view. They have a lot of, there's a lot of things that they need to consider that are happening in Europe right now, like people
Right.
joining NATO and Germany suddenly saying, hey, we're gonna gun up,
Right.
air quotes and pun intended. So I don't know. It's we've never seen anything like this, I think, in
No.
our times for sure.
No, not at all. Right. And I think it was funny that, where everybody's involved and wants to be involved and really wants to, is taking, the side of, Ukraine really. And they're like, well, why would we bring him into NATO and all the things? I mean, and we're just like going, okay, yeah, that's awesome. But that's like immediate war, right? You're in NATO, now we're at war. Let's have a nice day, And so I think that, it's interesting, like bringing all of the other countries in, which strengthens Europe's position, clearly, or the Eastern European positions significantly, but everybody's under threat because somebody just decides because they wake up and it's a Thursday and, like, let's get it on,
And as you know, those things aren't as simple as it's not a binary issue, because I mean, if you take Ukraine pre-Russian invasion. I mean, and somebody fact checked me on this, and I think Zelensky only had a 30% approval rating. There was all kinds of problems with corruption and things in the government. So, there were some issues that go back to, I think as I recall, it might have been France or somebody was kind of standing in the way of Ukraine's entry into NATO. And there's a lot of things that go back to, I think, earlier conversations. Gosh, what was it called? I can't think of it off the top of my head, but if you go back and you study some of the treaties and pacts and things that affect Ukraine in coming into NATO, it kind of brings a little bit of a light to why it's not been that easy for them to enter in, even
Right.
with all this, activity going on around them.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see. I think really what you're saying is that once this goes away, right, regardless of what the outcome is, will it be easy for them to be accepted into NATO if they're not completely absorbed by Russia, which doesn't look like it's going to happen? Which might be a yes, because we just want to, put that line there, And I think likely, how it is, like sins of the past are really, really forgiven based on your performance of yesterday. So, and today. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Did Yeah, it's going to be interesting, both politically and to see what NATO's going to do and what Europe will do post incident to help rebuild and revitalize economies. Um, Russia still and Putin himself is still the wild card here. We're not sure what he's going to do, although everyone, there's a million people that have a million predictions. I mean, I certainly am not smart enough to make one. But there are plenty of people out there that will. So let's just hope it's not a nuclear decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Closer to home, you saw the two guys that were impersonating federal agents.
Yeah.
Offering free apartments and gifts to Secret Service folks. I mean,
yeah.
What the heck?
Well, so first off, aside from all of that and just the ability to apparently dupe somebody, the headline that is like, hey, these guys freaking gave them luxury apartments, $40,000 a year. Yeah. Hang on a second, right? That is a dump in Washington D.C. I don't care where you are, for $3,000 a month. Come on, and so you got to take it with a grain of salt. This is funny, but
they were arrested. What's that guy's name? Scheherazade and Ali, both were arrested. I was just looking here, by the FBI early in April. They were impersonating various government officials. But what's the latest with those guys?
So first off, go ahead.
I also didn't realize 4 Secret Service employees had been suspended because they were allegedly duped by that duo.
Right. So I think what's very interesting is that the folks who caught him, or who it kind of like all this came to light, was the U.S. Postal Service, right? Which is which is crazy, right? And then those guys kind of felt really comfortable impersonating agents and like, yeah, we got this place wired for sound, that's all good to go, and it's all crazy. And then the Postal Service was like, something's not right here. So, freaking Postal Service wins one, I guess. Secret Service, more tick
the inspectors do a little bit of everything. We had a Postal Service inspector that came to the conference one year, and I spent about a half an hour talking to him, and that guy was involved in everything. And he was like, everything touches the post. And as a result, we get involved in a lot of stuff, including protection work for Postmaster General and some others in the agency. So,
right.
One of the unsung department for sure.
And what I think is interesting is that they both pled not guilty. I mean, not really. Yep. I mean, I don't find that super interesting. Of course, you're going to, go for the old due process piece, but seems pretty clear that, the old Walter Mitty effect is pretty strong here. So, whatever. It's just an interesting case. And unfortunately, the old service gets duped again,
Yeah, and I think right now, I was just looking at scanning the article, that the more updated article that you sent over. It looks like the status of the investigation is still unclear, but we'll have to keep our eyes open for that one. Because, I mean, again, I think for protectors in the protector space, I mean, you're going to meet people, may or may not be agents. They may show up. I mean, I've been on details before, foreign details, where you have people that show up and they flip out their credentials and say, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. I think just trust but verify goes a long way. Like,
right.
Hey, hold on, I need to verify before I let you close to my principal.
Right. Well, I think that's the piece, is that, it's pretty easy just to say, hey, look, I'm part of the team. And so how do I verify that? Right. I mean, cool. You have a lapel pin. If the lapel pin is your barrier to entry, then we're not in
trouble.
Really doing too well. Yeah. We got problems. So, it's interesting. So another kind of crazy deal is, did you see the where the Capitol was evacuated Wednesday evening for the aircraft that was a probable threat?
Yeah, I did, but I did not see any follow-up to it. Have they come out with anything further?
Yeah, it was parachutists that were parachuting into the I guess the baseball game. So
Ooh.
there's a demo, parachute demo. The photo that they show was the Golden Knights, but and it was the Golden Knights, but for whatever reason, this kind of you know communication can be helpful. You know,
Well,
that's
it makes me, I mean, when I saw that, now that you say it, it makes me wonder, like, what was the communication error? I mean,
right.
somebody clearly either didn't open their mail, or they just didn't get the mail, they didn't get a phone call, and somebody said, yeah,
Right.
no responses, must be acceptance.
Right. Well, and then the other piece is that, like, okay, great. Now how many people really truly were at the Capitol at the time, right? Because in the article I checked out, so I got it on one of our Intel feeds, and I was like, uh-oh, what's happening? Um,
Yeah.
and then I realized, like, well, wait a minute, it's freaking dark 30 back there. Everybody's downtown whacking down, steaks and cognac and cigars. So, again,
Yeah.
those headlines, right? Read them with a grain of salt. Good times.
Well, I mean, but again, you think like DC is definitely an area. I was out instructing last week, and we had some folks that were, that I brought on to talk to the students and all that. And it's funny still how many people bring up 9/11 and post 9/11. I think that's something that, that even to this day, people don't forget. And I think DC certainly is a place that, uh, won't forget that lesson for many,
Oh,
many decades. So
right, right, right,
I
right.
don't blame, we don't take it light, and we don't blame authorities for going on high alert, but it just is kind of something where it's like, hey, folks, pick up the phone or call somebody first. Like, hey, we're coming. Just don't shoot us.
Right. Well, like, yes, so coordinations are helpful, right? Because I think that, some of us have learned some very painful lessons in not coordinating, or jurisdictional or cross-agency coordinations. And that is and can be very, very challenging. But, uh, it's just
Well, there's a
something to make
bias. I
sure that
can't
you
think of
can
what it's called right
check
now,
that box,
but there's a bias that says people have a bias towards just assuming everything will work out all right. That's not, it's not called, that's not saying things won't work out, but man, I think in our business, it's like, yeah, we won't leave luck to something like that, because
Right.
I've also been on the other end of that, where I was like, you know what, they didn't answer, but I think it'll be fine. And then you show up and it's like, it's, it's not fine at all. And now I need to figure this out, or something bad is going to happen, or it's going to be my ass.
Yeah, I'd rather not live by the motto. I'd rather be lucky than good, because you can't control a whole lot of that. I can control being good for the most part. Speaking of shooting, how about it almost seemed like shootings just erupted over last week, with
Agree.
the New
Agree.
York, the thing in New York, and which is, you know, had to be horrible, right? In a confined space, complete
Mhm.
chaos, smoke, uh, you know, that part of post-COVID is coming back to normal, I think. Pretty crazy.
I think we're seeing effects of stress that are, maybe taking its toll. And I think as a result, I mean, look, it's always been there. I think COVID did what COVID did, and it exacerbated many people's issues, whatever they are. And I think we're seeing some of that play out, and it's unfortunate, but you're right. I mean, last week, there was quite an insane amount of shootings that
Mhm.
happened.
Right.
And right, you know, I and I think there's something to be said for protectors. Just to pay, I mean, yes, we all pay attention to that in our local news. We're all, we're affected by it. We want to understand how to deal with it, but there's also, you know, I don't want to say opportunities, because we're not ambulance chasers, but knowing that these things happen, maybe there's a way that protectors can help get ahead with, through education and training, and risk assessments
Right.
on events and in places.
Right. Well, especially now that a lot of events are opening back up, I mean, I think that, like we just talked about, I mean, I think it's important. So, um,
Well, I
yeah,
mean, I think
good
event
times.
risk management is the deal, and it's a tertiary thing of protection. I mean, you and I were talking, I don't know if it was last week, but like all the things that protectors do to kind of keep the lights on, because not there's really not that many full-time protection. I mean, yes, there are full-time protection teams,
But
probably
comparatively
not as
speaking,
many as people think,
right.
you know. And a lot of, there's a lot of residential teams. Certainly, that's part of the protection package. But dynamic teams that are traveling all around the world doing all this is probably not as many as most people think.
Right.
And there's a lot of events though, and events are coming back, as you say,
Right.
and that's a good that's a good I don't want to say side gig, because I think it's full on in itself a thing for
Oh,
protectors to do.
yeah, I have complete, like if you're an event professional, freaking, I'm down like four
Yeah.
flat tires. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there are some great people who focus on events that cross over and do EP work, and they're phenomenal. I mean,
Mm,
because they're just attention to detail is, and we talk on the show a lot about protectors and how we can rapidly develop crisis management situations. All, but these people are trained and know how to do it. So, when it comes to all that stuff, I mean, they're just all over it. So,
right.
you know,
Well, so I think we saved this, did we not? And I could be mistaken. What I don't remember. I'm getting old. Anyways,
say we did. If it's
the
smart, say we
whole,
said it.
yeah, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, we saved this. Um, the Will Smith piece, right, from the Academy Awards or whatever, right? So, uh,
Yeah.
you know, of course, the Twitter and the socials were just on fire because of,
Oh yeah.
and
Why did yeah.
so I think that I have a great appreciation for folks who weighed in on that, but I think you kind of got to look at it a little differently from perhaps how it was portrayed, right? So I love this
Mhm.
because everybody wants to be a Monday morning quarterback. I just try to ask the question, and I'll be honest. Sometimes I'll be Monday morning quarterback the shit out of some stuff, right? But here's a big deal, right? So if you know anything about events, usually the event itself is locked down. Everybody and their brother
Mhm.
is invited. Uh,
Yeah.
you
Protectors are not in that room, I guarantee you.
right, unless you've
And
got
if
a
they are, they've stuck in.
significant right, unless you got a significant threat against your principal again with another person who is also invited. Uh, maybe Elijah has some of his seat fillers in place, right? But this is an exclusive event. You still will have some security there, but oftentimes, and it is, did you ask the question? Is there anything that's supposed to happen? Is there anybody coming from the stage? Is there anything doing this? Then, of course, you have
Mhm.
a comedian who's an MC who's making jokes and an actor, A-list actor walking up. I don't care who you are, right? It's not
That's
like you're
called a
going to be
black
like,
swan event.
exactly. And you're like, cool. If I was there, I would have given Will Smith the people's elbow. Yeah, okay. Like, uh, all right.
No,
You know,
I mean that is a black swan. That is a black swan activity. Nobody knew that was happening. Nobody. I
right,
mean, I'm not even sure, and I have no idea what Will Smith was thinking in the moment. I'm sure if he could redo it, he would change it. But I think in that moment, he probably wasn't sure what he was going to do up until he got there
right,
on stage.
right. I agree. Yeah, yeah.
So I think insofar as that, I feel bad for the. I mean, look, I've worked the Academy Awards a couple times. It's like it literally is your concentric rings of protection circles. There's LAPD.
External,
There's
all the things.
there's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean there's cops. There's private. There's I mean it's the thing of the thing of the thing. And once you get into that room, that room is locked down. But you're right. All those people in there are theoretically Hollywood royalty, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, So I think some of the folks that have come on and said I would have done this or I would have done that, they no, they wouldn't have. They wouldn't have. I mean, what are you going to tackle Will Smith as he's
Right,
going up the stairs because you don't
right,
know?
right. Well,
I
and
mean,
usually what you
clearly
see
the
is everybody.
Academy was.
Right. You see everybody fawning over, oh, this guy's going and here's this guy and all the things. And don't get me wrong. I know there are professionals out there that is their job and they don't get starstruck and they don't do the things. Look, I worked
Yeah,
events
yeah, yeah, sure.
before, right? All the things, but
Yep.
it's a very, very difficult, it's a, like you said, it's a black swan, right? And now it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see just how security for those events is changed so that doesn't happen again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's the conversation. If you think about, look, if we think about the conversation of stress and Will Smith did an excellent series, I think, on YouTube where he talks about how he kind of kind of went through some personal therapy and whatever he did to kind of reinvent himself or not rediscover himself or whatever. But I mean, that's Will Smith. I mean, think about the amount of stress that's out there in society right now, and even he succumbed to it.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I just think it's we were talking. I mean, you and I were talking before we turned the mics on about workplace violence and
Mhm.
how important that is for protectors to understand workplace violence and the issues around the pathway to violence and all those things,
Mhm.
because that's something, that's something that protectors, are dealing with day in and day out.
Yeah, all day. I mean, yeah, that's your the pathway to violence is your pathway to being employed, you know? I
Yeah,
mean, it
I
just
mean,
is what it is,
I before I came to Austin, I was out at a lunch and talking to a guy, and he was like, "I got to go. One of my clients is releasing somebody, and we need to get somebody over there." I was okay.
Right.
So it is unfortunate too, and I think hopefully as a society we'll continue to place more emphasis on well-being and mental health and dealing with all that. But until then, there's a role for a protector there.
Yeah, I agree.
And you're right. The event space is going to change. I mean, the Grammys, the Academies, they're all going to change next year, I think, as a result of this. And I think there'll be a lot of questions like who's sitting where, how can you get up on stage? You're going to have to come up there. There'll be something so they have that Snickers moment before they do something that they'll regret. Shall we put it that way? I don't know
Right.
if they're gonna. My prediction is they'll change the stairs or something so there'll be a little bit of a either a longer walk or something will be changed.
Right.
But I mean, did it? I think I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about that event, and they said, "Look, nothing against the two gentlemen and the issue they had, but like it still had some of the worst ratings on TV." So the question is, yeah, it happened. Did anybody care? Did anybody in the Nielsen's or anybody who were out there watching? Were they even watching it? Did they care? I mean,
Right.
surely if you watch it, you did. I did not. I only saw it the next day. I think you're the one that sent me the text and said you need to go check that out right now.
Yeah, don't put that juju on me, Ricky Bobby. I did not watch it. I got the socials blew me. Hey, did you see this? And I'm like, oh, what's happening, right? Yeah. I mean, because at the end of the day, like nobody. I mean, that's been a thing for them for a long time, right? Ratings, right? Like nobody's watching.
Yeah.
They need to bring Ricky Gervais back now. If they do, he might get bum rushed because he was brutal but awesome. So,
Well,
anyways,
I think
interesting.
the guy I was listening to and I didn't watch him this year, but he was saying like they did it. They tried to do a bunch of new things that just kind of came off kind of awkward. But hey, I'm not a critic. I don't put them on. I appreciate everyone out there trying to change things up. But I think they're going to change it yet again next year. Speaking of the social medias, that video that I sent you on Instagram of that little kid going full on God mode, that
Oh
little
yeah, yeah,
kid
that's a pretty good one. Yeah,
in the karate tournament. I don't know
yeah,
why that cracks me up every time I look at that thing.
yeah. He's a little beast, man.
Uh,
Freaking watch
yeah,
this.
and he
Quack.
and he knows it. He knows it
Yep.
too. He walks out. He's like, "I'm in it to win it," and he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. Pretty awesome.
Hey, closer in your great state of California.
Yes.
There was that LA Times article I sent you. I think it was a couple weeks ago, but they were saying that like they're like LA Times is saying more than a dozen gangs are targeting some of the city's wealthiest residents,
Yep.
sending out cars and to find, follow, basically do drive-bys and in issues with high-end vehicles or people wearing expensive jewelry. It sounds like, yes, you might be going, this happens all the time, but according to the LA Times article, I mean, it's happening more aggressively and more openly.
Right, and more organized. I spoke to a friend of mine who's in the business. He's about to be a retired LAPD sergeant. He said that, number one, if you look at it, 17 gangs, not 17 people, not 17, individuals, but 17 different gangs are sending out crews to go into these neighborhoods. And he's talking about, like, look, they don't care if it's if they have LPRs, out front or whatever. They just boldly go where, where the money or the riches are. And he said there are some places, even there's one way in and one way out of the neighborhood or the town. They don't care. They're going in, they're getting their stuff, and they're coming out. So it's an interesting thought process for anybody who is butted up against, obviously LA is a massive city, right? But anybody who's in some of these areas, even in Silicon Valley, where you've got, known or cities of known wealth, known high net worth, and then, your next door neighbors who, one or two cities over that aren't, I mean, some of these places you can just throw a rock and run into a billionaire. So might as well roll the dice, right? I mean, I think that's the thought process.
I think Dallas is the same. I'm not saying Dallas is having the same issues, but I mean, Dallas is pretty set up very much the same way too. You have very affluent neighborhoods butted up to, haves and have-nots. And I think, something else we've seen over the last couple of years, well, let's say the last 3 years is a heightened sense of the haves and the have-nots. And
Right.
I think I mean, if the LA Times is reporting it now, it's been probably going on for a while, because I don't
agree.
think they just said, hey, let's go report on something tomorrow.
Correct.
And it sounds like from your source, like it has been. I mean, I don't know, it'd be interesting for us, I think, to get some protectors from the LA area on and to talk about this and see, if they've been doing anything. Certainly if you're in the security driving or security transportation business, this is something you should note or follow.
Right. Yeah. So I think, so these are all the things that we had assumed would happen. I don't know about the immediacy of it, but as you look at most, like people are starting to have to make buying decisions now based on inflation, right? Increased gas prices, increased food prices, increased, prices across the board. And then of course, the supply of options are down, at least for a lot of Americans, right? So if you're having trouble making ends meet, or you're moving into, a crime area, or you're in crime and that's what you do, then you're going to go where the opportunity is. So any residential details, like you said, security drivers, et cetera, just, you need to kind of be on the lookout for these things, or at least have the ability to track what crime is in the area, what the uplifts are, and the movement, through a some sort of platform that allows you to do that.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I mean, the protective intelligence piece on this is important, and also things like surveillance or counter surveillance, because according to the article, they're using spotters.
Right.
And we also, I mean, I think, was it 2 years ago that there was more open robberies in greater San Francisco and also in Oakland?
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
look at Portland. I mean, Portland continues to be under a state of protest.
right.
I mean, that's just called Tuesday there.
Yes.
And
it's,
you
is
talk to Brian
unfortunate, but
Flannery, he's
again,
like,
I think that's where we're at.
He's like, yeah. And I think it just increases the issues in terms of understanding, like, think globally, but also monitor locally as well. So, yeah, I think you're right.
A balanced approach.
Yeah, and opportunities, but also opportunities, opportunities to educate, opportunities to get involved, opportunities to, expand your business through through doing what's right and, protecting. Because, we said it way at the beginning of the show here, but both Ross Hill and Meredith Wilson, if you follow them on social media, have been talking about talking about food issues and security issues with food scarcity that that we may see. And this isn't us being alarmist. I mean, it's just these are conversations that are going on. Not, and we may not see it in our hometown because we can still go down and get a Big Mac, but there are places in the world that it's becoming a bit of a thing. Cooking oil, food, water.
Well, I mean, well, first off, we're supposed to be risk professionals, and part of that is identifying risk is number one. And then number two is, okay, great, what's the ripple effect of those risks? So not alarmist at all. It's what potentially could be on the horizon,
for sure.
It's interesting. So you talked about surveillance detection. The folks that two of the guys that were in the 2020 plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. I think we talked about this just briefly in one of the shows, but those guys had conducted surveillance on her vacation home in northern Michigan. Nobody knows to what extent, right? But they, and they looked at two different targets, if you will. It's out there, right? Whether you're a governor or not, high net worth individual, those things are out there. Kind of a little bit of a black eye for the government yet again. Those two of those folks were acquitted in that plot to kidnap a sitting governor, which is insane, right?
Well, I mean, can we just say it? I mean, we were talking about it before we turned the mics on. I mean, insane. Like, I was in disbelief that those guys were acquitted.
But I think that sitting governor, number one. But again, I think the challenge is, again, it's a black eye on the FBI because of how they, got the information, or not again the FBI, because this is one of ones that we're talking about. But I would say from federal law enforcement, not doing so hot in the news against these big cases, So it's just interesting.
Well, I think so. Here's a takeaway from this for folks in our, in the private sector that are managing and conducting and doing surveillance or doing these types of activities. And often we think like there's no tertiary issue for me. Everything you do must be defensible. Everything you do must be defensible. So whether it's within the policy of the organization you have, whether, obviously within the law of the state and, and the nation. I mean, you have to consider that everything you do is defensible. Sometimes you find yourself at odds with like, hey, policy and state law, organizational policy and state law are kind of at loggerheads here. We got to figure it out. Well, you better figure it out.
Right.
I mean, you better figure it out, because I mean, look at what just, and I think it just recently came out in your neck of the woods, in one of the local papers, but the former eBay boss,
right?
I mean, pled guilty to 2 of those felonies, or what was the final on that one?
And I thought it was like 4 charges or something like that. I don't know. It was just, you kind of knew that was coming, right? And I think that's the piece where, in this case, at the end of the day, we're defensive, right? When somebody's like, "Cool, let's do this," probably let's go on the offense. Probably not the right spot for you. Where you're mimicking the TTPs of whatever the aggressor are. That's probably not helpful.
And I know there's folks, well, yeah, but I did what I needed to do because that's what I needed to do to protect my boss and all these other things. And look, I mean, you have to consider every aspect of what you're doing. And again, is it defensible? Is it worth going to jail over? Is it, But again, back to those two guys in the hung jury and the Whitmer issue. I mean, I was in disbelief.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, well, they cried entrapment, so as a result, they were able to use that to get a hung jury, and that's what you needed.
Yep.
So I'll be curious to see how the rest of that falls out. And then I'm just looking here. I think I think on the eBay he pled guilty to 4 of those. I think.
Yeah, I think it was 4.
Yeah, and I mean 4 felonies, correct?
Uh, I don't. I'm not sure. I thought that I don't think they were felonies. I could be mistaken. I didn't really,
Okay.
to be
Yeah,
honest,
I may be incorrect on that, but
care enough to look.
pled guilty to 4 charges.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, 9 charges in connect. I just pulled that up to make sure we got it right. Uh, admitted Monday in federal court in Boston to 9 charges in connection with the campaign that involved disturbing deliveries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So 9 charges. So I mean that's heavy, my friend.
Yet again, the postal inspector rears its ugly head.
or not. I mean, but I mean, likely one that protectors will continue to follow. Will continue to follow on this, but it goes back to, like we said, what you do must be defensible, and I think you aptly pointed out, don't mimic the enemy. Understand the enemy, but don't mimic them.
Yeah, and it's frustrating, right? It's frustrating when you're just dealing with threats all the time or whatever the case is or nuisances, and you just want to go, man, it'd be so awesome just to reach out to this guy and just tell him to, essentially
But you can't.
pound sand.
They're reaching out to you right now.
Yeah, it's my oldest.
It's one of your POIs. Chris, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of things that we've been tracking here, you saw that there was the Haiti assassination probe has, go figure, stalled, but the U.S. has,
I don't understand. That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, the one happening in Haiti was stalled. Their investigation, they said, it has been stymied, and they haven't charged anyone. And the motive, shockingly, remains a mystery. And they've appointed a new judge in it. However, the U.S. says they're continuing to try to unravel and figure out what happened. So I think likely at some point we will get some information on this. But we're going to continue to watch. I think, as I saw in the Washington Post article I wrote down here, it says U.S. government supports a, quote, thorough independent investigation, end quote, into the assassination, and is assisting. So hopefully the U.S. will help guide Haiti into figuring this one out, because we certainly have continued to follow it here.
This whole thing really calls into question, to my mind, right, the whole Raven 23 debacle, right? Where here's something that happened months ago and they still haven't gotten it figured out yet. And then with that whole deal, people show up 8 hours after the fact, everybody's convicted, and people are in jail recently. It's just crazy, right? I don't know. It's just it's all a roll of the dice,
Yeah, and certainly something we'll continue to follow here, because it's assassination of a nation state head, and I mean, still we still don't know. So I don't know. I mean, it's crazy times, my friend. I mean, we've just sat here for the last I don't know how long we've been chatting here, but for the last hour, and I mean, it just continues to be, I don't think there's going to be flowers and ice cream anytime soon.
I agree. I was having a conversation with I think Brad Christian and Josh Burmeister, and we kind of like laid out all the craziness that was going on like in the world, and it was just like, holy crap, like so many things on the global scale, and then of course, like we were talking about previously, what is happening locally, right? And then what does that look like regionally? What are the other, seasonal threats? And then again, we're looking at a bunch of other things that we haven't even talked about yet, and it's just not awesome.
These are just stuff we pulled off the news that we thought were interesting to talk about. I mean, if you look at my news feeds and the stuff I have coming in and the way it's all laid out, I mean, it's just, you're right, it's all over. It's all over. It's everywhere. I mean, and and in some fashion, you could say, oh yeah, we're only seeing more of it now because of social media and in open source. But I'm not sure. I think we might be seeing more than we've seen in quite some time. And I think the problem also then becomes like tracking it. If you're an organization or an individual, which of those are important to you and which of those are important to your clients,
Right,
or clientele.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, it so it bodes well for folks that are in the protective intelligence space.
Yeah,
Matter of
and
fact, I think
protectors.
yeah, well, and protectors too, right? But I think as it filters through, you gather information, and then you go, oh, hopefully you're gathering information, and you go, oh, the solutions to this are to put protectors in place or shift assets or resources. Then there's the other end of things where you go, oh my God, this thing just slapped me in the face. We need protectors, right? So there's protectors on both ends. Hopefully that we're transitioning to looking as far down the road as possible, and then maybe hopefully either change the trajectory or just sidestepping some of those threats.
Well, and there's so much information that to be taken in, and taking that information, making it into something actionable that then makes it intelligence to help, people make risk decisions. Sounds like a textbook thing, but it is. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's really what we want. There's
Yeah.
a finite amount of money that we can spend on something, or resources that we have to throw at a problem. So, the better off we are to have an informed course of action, if you will, the better we are.
Yeah. No, I agree.
There's
And again, I think all of this has to be stated that none of this happens in a vacuum, and nothing is black and white, right? Because, budget gets a vote, which is the most important,
Yep.
piece of all this,
Budget
right?
gets a vote, culture gets a vote. I mean, all these things, yeah, and and some of them will stymie you, and some of them will support you. I mean, and it's important to remember that, you got to take your emotions out of it so you can continue to make good decisions based on what you have in hand. So,
Right.
for sure. Speaking
Don't
of good
ask me.
decisions, okay. Speaking of good, yeah, make it defensible, bro. Um, Speaking of good decisions, it's a good decision. Wait for it, to come on Clubhouse and listen
God
to
bless America.
expound on something. Boom. But seriously, I've missed the last couple of Clubhouses. Kind of fill me in. How's it been, and what's coming up?
So what's coming up? I asked you not to ask me that because I haven't put anything on
Oh,
the
that's what
schedule
you meant.
yet. That's
Okay.
why I said don't ask me. But uh, we had
Can
some.
you rewind that?
Yes,
Let's see.
yes. Um, but
No,
we had
what
some
have we been doing? I actually missed the last two because I've been on the road.
yeah we had some good discussions. Yesterday we had one, or earlier this week we had one about principal recovery and evacuations. So, what happens when you're not co-located with your principal and you've got to move to them and then recover them, and then, decide how to cover and evacuate, what that looks like. And that was a pretty good discussion.
That
One of the,
sounds that sounds like a great discussion.
yeah, so one of the challenges in that is in that discussion is, not making it about the way of the gun versus whatever. So it's a, it's a corporate environment, or, solo practitioner. So we talked about a bunch of different variables and had some great people that jumped on that piece. And then we've just had some, great high level discussions. I think a couple of weeks ago we really talked about what has happened to EP. Let's see, week before last, we had a service versus security discussion, and what does that look like? And the service security scale as it applies to each of the different segments of executive protection. And that, we need to make sure that we shift gears. If your threat is going up significantly, your service might be ebbing, based on that, right? I mean, you're not going to be like, hey, We're under sniper threat. Can I get you? Do you still want the lemon scented hand towels or no? You know, like one of those kind of things, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Yes,
just
to both.
applying the
And stop the
appropriate.
snipers.
Yeah, exactly. Then we talked about, um, the like what's happened within EP is like, like delivering services. What do those services look like? What does a full scale protection detail look like versus, when people just kind of show up and go, cool, I'm here to make sure you get from point A to point B. I didn't do an advance. That's not what I do. Or I've been here before, so I don't need to do the advance. I had somebody say that check
No,
this
no,
out.
no, 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 no.
No. Check this out.
Oh, no.
When they went to do the pickup for the principal, the terminal moved. But I did the advance. Come on, bro.
You're kidding.
No.
You're kidding me.
No.
Did you kick them off the call?
It wasn't me. Somebody had told me
Did-
that this happened. So
Were
it
you
was
like,
crazy.
hey, you're going to have to stay after class and do push-ups until I'm tired.
Yes.
Wow.
Pretty crazy, right? So
Oh, that is crazy. I mean, that's that's like a wiffle ball bat moment to me. I mean, the terminal moved.
right.
Okay,
So
we're about to have a terminal. We're about to have a terminal movement
there's
right
about
now.
to be a terminal movement right now. I mean, again,
Oh my
now that some people might consider a black swan event as well, right? I mean, you go to the airport all the time. What am I supposed to, like?
I don't. That's not a black swan event, people. Not a black swan event.
Good time.
That's a dumbass event, is what that is. There's no other way to put it. So, well, I look forward to continuing some clubhouse discussions. I like those that, get a little more tactical in the weeds about some of the stuff we're talking about. And we have, some good things getting ready to come up on the show. I just did something for Az's a couple weeks ago, in conjunction with the company. I did a webinar on creating value in an organization and trying to understand metrics and things like that. That was pretty good. And that might be a good discussion for us to have here too. I mean, we've had it off and on, but especially in the, if you look across like I said, we're on the plane, everybody's talking about all, tech companies taking a hit. And if that's some type of indicator of what's going to happen in the greater market, I mean, it's more important than ever to check the terminal, because
Exactly.
that, my friend, is a measurement of effectiveness.
Exactly. So here's another freaking idiotic moment. Did you see the video about the kid poking the other bear, Mike Tyson, on the
Oh my, yeah, that. But when I saw that, here's something it did remind me. Like, I've done some work for athletes, and that's a different type of protection, because you do get those, I'll use a technical term, doofuses that come up, and like, either I had a guy throw a football at a protectee I had, because he's a quarterback, and it was like, catch. And I want to say, like, Chris, I skillfully blocked it, like some John Wick movement, but I just did some like wide arm movement and swatted the thing down. But I mean, you can totally, like, dude, what did you expect if you're going to go after Mike Tyson?
right. Well,
You're going to get pummeled.
like, to me, that's like freaking going to the zoo and then jumping into the freaking the freaking pen with the bear and then being upset that the bear freaking mauled you. Like, you're a dumbass, right? Like,
But there were, I mean, there are those people out there that are looking to pick a fight with people like that so they can turn around and sue them. I mean, I think that
make you famous.
particular individual is just a doofus, but
right.
there are folks like, I want to be famous, and I want you to, it's worth it for me to take a broken jaw if I can take you for, a couple $100,000 later.
Yeah. Well,
but harder though now, when you get like, stupid is as stupid does. I mean, the look on Tyson's face, I was like, oh man, earphones, and it's gonna
That poor guy, man, freaking poor guy. Anyway, so there was another piece. This is the one I forgot to mention, which was apparently there's some protesters at some of the playoff games. Did you see that? The
No, I did not. Let me look it up right now.
For basketball, right? And the security team did a pretty good job.
I saw it.
Posting
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
right? Yeah. And
Man,
freaking
they
just
are
people's elbow, schwack.
they are stalking that individual like a puma, and it's like boom.
Yeah. Well,
Now,
so what's interesting is how do you, okay, talk about a doofus, right? Like, all right, I'm gonna go right now. Like, there's a security guard, like a uniformed security officer, 4 seats away from me, and go.
now
It's so
and
good.
again, we try not to play Monday morning quarterback here, but I would be curious to talk to the security team and say, did anybody approach the individual and talk to them? Like, hey, just want to see how you're doing. We're noticing that you're kind of twitchy a little bit,
Right.
just be forewarned that, anybody that tries to come on, or there might be a way to walk to that hole. Just remember, folks, nobody's allowed to go on the floor here and look at that person. Again, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. The video is awesome, and they are on that individual, like, as you say, they're down with it like 4 flat tires or whatever. But I would be curious to get like a little bit more on that, like if there was more that we could find out.
Well, so I think that's an interesting piece because it goes back to what is your security director's background, what is your focus, and what are you doing, right? So from a protector standpoint, you said it needs to be defendable, right? I argue most of it, I need to prevent, and then my prevention needs to be defendable, right? So
yeah, of course, that's exactly what I mean.
Right,
Your actions, whatever they are, needs to be defensible.
Right. So like you said, what do I need to catch you and arrest you, or do I just need to deter you? Right. So if I sit right next to you and go, hey, what's up? Thinking about bum rushing the deal? Not today. And then you've done,
not going to go so well for you.
Or knock yourself out or get knocked out, up to you. Good talk. And then freaking, are you going to deter it? Or are you going to let them move? Or what is the deal? Right. And then you've disrupted the attack instead of letting it happen and then, allowing, catching him in the middle. That's the only piece I would say is that, it was really cool to watch.
I'll be curious to see.
But why did you just not go, hey?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if we see more attempts, or if more come to light or whatever. But I mean, certainly if you're out there, and a little bit more about that situation, or you're somebody in that event space, please reach out to us at protectiontalk@outlook.com. We'd certainly love to talk to you about it and gain a little more insight into that, because I was curious about that. But dude, they do bring that individual down, which I was like impressed with. But
yeah,
I was waiting on, like, for the next 4 nights, more protesters getting in. That was an expensive ticket to try to do that, probably.
For sure.
That was the other thing too, is like, can I see your ticket? Should you be sitting here?
Right.
I don't know. So more to follow. I think that's one maybe we should try to get some more information on. That one, that'd be an interesting one.
Yeah. Like, sporting events are
Awesome.
fairly, those event folks are usually, on their game, right? Yeah,
Oh,
that's not your
100%.
ticket. This is these are the box suites. You're up there.
I'm sorry. I thought I was supposed to be here. Sure you did.
Yeah,
Come
you
on.
did. Yeah, you did.
Come
Yeah. You walk back that way, go up 4 flights of stairs, and that's you on the right.
But yeah.
Good times.
Awesome. Well, I think that will do it for our April edition of Shop Talk. Anything else to add before we move to close this one out, Chris?
No, I think we moved through a lot of it. Be aware.
These are just the ones we picked too. So
yeah,
I'll
there's
post
a lot.
these up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, there was a lot. Oh, by the way, I did see that Travis started his own podcast, by the way. That's one last little tidbit I saw. Security student, should check it out. It's, Travis is a lifelong student, so I thought that was apropos, if you will, for a name for his inaugural podcast. So awesome. Well, this has been Conversations in Close Protection. My name is Chuck Randolph, and across the digital divide has been the man in the Sisyphean pursuit of excellence, Mr. Chris Story. We appreciate you listening.
Did you say like pursuit of excellence? The Sisyphean pursuit?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's down. It's good. And it's kind of like a little bit of a ties into all the stuff we've been talking about and risk and all that. So, you know me, trying to bring it even jet lagged. So
there it is.
We do appreciate everyone writing in. We are, gosh, I can't even think how many shows we are right now, but we've in downloads, but we couldn't do it without all of you who support us and send in and talk about the show. And we appreciate folks who share it out and discuss it and keep the conversations going. So thank you for your support. With that, wash your hands, watch your six, and keep your heads down.
Good times.
You've been listening to an episode of Conversations in Close Protection. Email us at protectiontalk@outlook.com and find us on your preferred podcast platform. Please take a moment and consider rating us to help others find Conversations in Close Protection too. Look for us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and other social media spots. Conversations in Close Protection is brought to you by your hosts Chuck Randolph and Chris Story. Our engineering editor is the mighty Aaron Peck. Please remember that all opinions expressed do not represent those of any organizations or companies the hosts are affiliated with. This is Rachel saying watch your six and keep your heads down.